Go live.
And so we got to get the beach house. Then you just walk to the beach and you're home by lunchtime.
Well, we got that coming up soon.
Mm.
All right. Looks like everything's good. Put an M for Hornets. It's Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are talking about old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. All right, let me just fix my... I got to point this at the right web browser really quick. Bop. Let's see. Chrome. Point at that tab. There it goes. All right, I'll just start. So, just because I tend to be pretty lucky, and other than injuries, like I almost never get seriously sick. I don't really have any reason to go to a doctor. So,
Disease.
yep, that was
Horrifying food poisoning.
So the last 2 times I've been to a doctor for something serious were injuries. And that's over the past like 5 years. Lyme disease was like, I was still working at IBM. I hadn't even graduated from RIT yet. I actually had to go back and finish my senior year.
Severe allergy, like you couldn't even breathe at night.
Actually, that's never happened to me.
I thought you had like some allergy thing. Oh no, was that like a reflux? Was fucking?
Oh, I had bad heartburn at RIT, like so bad that I went to the doctor. And the end result of all that, they were like, "How many hours of sleep do you get on an average night? And don't lie to us." And I answered honestly, and the doctor was like, "I'm not prescribing you anything. Sleep at least 6 hours a night for a week, and I will bet you money it goes away." And guess what? It disappeared completely if I got at least 6 hours of sleep.
Sure.
That was during that era. You know, there's an era at RIT where Scott and I recognized this. You know, we were freshmen hanging out. That was a whole new experience. We'd stay up till like 11 hanging out. Then we'd stay up till like midnight hanging out. And then over that year and the next year, we started to push that boundary further and further and further. And then we hit a point that was too late. Like we were staying out till like 2, 3.
That one time.
We were staying out till like 2, 3 in the morning, and it was like, okay, we gotta fucking sleep because we do actually have classes sometimes.
You had that bonitis.
Yep. So I got a physical 3 years ago, and I got a physical 2 years before that. Because generally, every time I get a physical, my doctors tell me I don't need to come back anytime soon unless I have a complaint until I turn 40. And since I turned 40 next year, I figured, all right, I'm going to get a physical. It's been 3 years. Just make sure there's nothing wrong that I don't know about. You know, like the blood work might say, oh, you got a thing. Like there's latent bonitis just ready to come out. So
a return of bonitis too.
Bonitis 2, the bonening.
The electric bonaloo.
So I got a physical for the first time in 3 years today. And of course, I saw a different doctor because my PCP, who I see so rarely, is on like long-term leave. So I just went to some random other doctor. They had all my charts, like it didn't matter. And they read through my chart and they looked at me. And what the lady said was that I was, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm saying exactly what she said. You are the healthiest and most fit person I've ever seen. Like you don't need to come back in anytime soon. But I don't know what to tell you. Come back in a few years. Do you want to schedule you're going to be 40. You want to schedule a colonoscopy at some point just because? And otherwise she was like, yeah, I got nothing for you. Keep doing what you're doing.
That's what they say to me at the dentist. They're like, well, your teeth are clean.
Yep. I'm not as lucky at the dentist. The dentist, they're more like, yep, your teeth were fucked up the way you described from 8 years of braces as a kid. And there's nothing we can do about that. So, yeah, pending blood work, I seem to still be doing okay, trucking along. The only funny thing was she asked about my diet and with my weight and everything, and she basically said that I should eat a lot more carbs than I do, like specifically, like eat more carbs for the love of God. Not to gain weight, but because my blood sugar is like always really low. Because I just don't eat enough food compared to my activity level. I'm not at the level where and my fat, like the body fat and all that combined, she basically said my blood sugar probably gets way too low way too often because I'm straddling this line just from how little I eat compared to how much exercise I get.
Well, and stop exercising so much.
No, actually, she said exercise more, just eat more too.
Okay.
That was the most exciting thing. It's still COVID. While we're seeing friends bit by bit and starting to do stuff, it's not like I can go on a big trip or anything. So that physical was the most exciting thing that's happened to me recently.
Yeah, your doctor's office. I'm surprised they're even doing physicals. It's like, there's a pandemic. Why would you waste time doing?
Yep, so they had sort of said, yeah, hold off on anything non-essential like last year. And they basically, like the email I got was like, yeah, last year was rough, but this year you should start scheduling your preventative treatment type stuff again, unless you have a good reason not to.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, but it'd been 3 years. I figured like it was probably, I should get one just in case.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, yesterday, I got up, was doing my thing, just working, and there's a funny smell like in the apartment, and it was a kind of ozony, kind of burny, and I was like, it doesn't seem right. And then I went over to the balcony, and it smelled stronger, so I opened the door, and it smelled like everything was on fire. And then, of course, I checked. The wildfire smoke had made it to New York way more than it ever has.
Even
Like-
though it started way across the country or where
Yep.
it came, Canada. I don't know where it came from.
The
It was not far
AQI
away.
in New York City yesterday was 170, which is like the chart usually shows like 0 to 50 is like green. 50 to 100 is like yellow, like, it's not great. Up to 150 is like, orange. You should probably like, don't go run 10 miles outside. And 150 up is usually red, like, do not go outside. This is dangerous.
The thing that bothers me the most is when there is an AQI situation, right? They're always like,
Don't go outside. Don't exercise.
don't exercise, don't go outside, don't,
And that's
especially
true
if
because
you're
it's
not
actually
in super
dangerous.
health.
Like it can hurt your lungs, like depending on the kind of
course it
pollution.
could, right? I'm not saying
It's
that's
good
not
advice.
true. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it's a very victim-blamey thing.
That is a very U.S. thing. I have been in France
the
during air quality
AQI
warnings.
When the AQI is high, they should say, don't drive. No driving allowed, period.
I have been in places outside of the U.S. where that happens. I was in Singapore
Yeah,
during a bad bird. They were like,
sense.
yep, like Singapore, Paris, both places have like Paris. They were like, yep, congestion charges are bigger because of this, or don't drive into the city unless it's an emergency.
A friend on Twitter suggested that when the AQI is high, they should just jack up all the tolls on everything to be like
Yep.
$100 plus, right?
I've seen places where they do things like, yep, fireworks are now banned until further notice.
Fireworks are
Mowing your
banned
lawn
until
is
further
banned.
notice Anyway, that's at all times.
Yeah.
Doesn't stop anybody.
Well, the congestion charges, at least for Manhattan, are slowly working through.
Sure, but the point is, we are capable of putting, stop train, don't
Scott,
go anywhere.
Scott,
orders.
we-
They did them during the hurricane. They said
Scott,
no transportation. You can't go anywhere.
We as
And it worked.
humans are capable of a lot of things. The problem is we are bad at executing on those things because half of us want
Just do the
objectively
same-
bad things.
Just do the same transportation ban you do when a hurricane's coming when there's an AQI problem.
Oh, agreed.
Right?
Agreed. But the problem is half of America, even a lot of people in places like New York City, like it's still 20 or 30% of the people here, want objectively bad things on purpose.
Well, too bad. And I know that this particular AQI incident was due to fires far away.
It's still bad right now. It's still like 70.
If you turn off the cars, then that would would probably bring it down from 150 to like 100.
That was
at
something
least,
that really stood out during the pandemic, like last year. That summer, New York City's air was so good. It was like startling. It will stick with me because this summer it's not only is it back to normal, but the air is way worse because traffic in New York City is not just at an all-time high for like New York City, which it is also at an all-time high for all of America right now. We literally have the worst traffic in America and the worst traffic New York City has ever had. But last summer, and the air is shit now. Like the air is just shit here. Like it always is. It's even worse. Last summer, the air was so good that like I smelled things in Manhattan that I'd never smelled before. Some of them not great, but I smelled some things I wish I hadn't smelled. But I also smelled good things. Like I smelled a lot more flowers. And if I look at my Strava, like just my biking times, my running times, everything, even at the start of COVID, not toward the end of last summer where I'd been running like a maniac and like just getting better at it, my times were just better like at the start of last summer. And I think it's partly just because the air was way better. I can't prove that, but I have data that shows I was like 15% faster at the start of last running season compared to any other running season in my life.
Well,
And the only difference was the air was way better. So yeah, anyway, we got some news. I guess what I want to start with is we have not seen it yet, but Bell, Mamoru Hosoda's upcoming movie, his latest work.
And upcoming, it's out.
Well, it's out. I mean, we haven't seen it yet. It's out. Is it out everywhere? Because
No,
it
it's out in
debuted at
Japan.
Cannes.
It's the #1 movie at the Japanese box office.
Yeah. I don't know if we can see it in the U.S. yet.
The Olympics can't have spectators, but people can go to the movie theater to see this.
Yeah. But I think what's notable is we've talked about how it's coming, like how we're excited about it, how it appears like it's going to be good. His track record, Hosoda's batting 1,000. So, Babe Ruth is coming up to the bat, and odds are he's going to hit another home run. But something moderately phenomenal happened. I say moderately because the caveat of this is a kind of performative thing that happens at Cannes, like it's happened before. But
Can I never pronounce the freaking
but so when the film was shown there, it got a 14-minute standing ovation from the audience. The record in the history of this festival was Pan's Labyrinth, with 22 minutes.
Pan's Labyrinth is overrated. I mean,
I would say it is.
I like it all. I
would say it is
I think
correctly
it's way
rated.
overrated.
I think it is correctly rated.
I think people, I mean, my impression is that people absolutely lose their shit over Pan's Labyrinth. Like, oh, it's fucking incredible. And I'm like, it's really good, but it's not fucking incredible.
I would say it's incredible. It's on the lower end of incredible.
I don't think so.
It's a better movie than Citizen Kane. Structurally, I would argue from a structural standpoint, it is a better made movie. Granted, the difference is Citizen Kane did some techniques that weren't widely done or had never been done.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like a Mona Lisa situation. Like, how great do you want a Mona Lisa on your wall? Do you want a Citizen Kane on your wall? No, but they basically invented. It's like,
but so it's notable that an anime got such a response, but it's also notable that the few reviews I've seen or like candid statements from film professionals
wrote like, oh my god, they lost their shit.
I have not seen the worst review I saw said that this is the best movie of the year, and some like the level. I'm not saying it's hyperbole. It very well could be, but people are acting like this is the greatest movie they have ever seen in their life.
Yeah. So what I found out actually is I knew that the fact that it was called Belle, that it had some relation to, Beauty and the Beast.
I assume Beauty and the Beast from that 10-second pre-teaser trailer we saw.
Of course, that's obvious. It's not a secret at all. But what I found out was that the actual Japanese title of this movie is Belle : probably pronouncing this wrong, Ryuto Sobakasu no Hime, which means
dragon, the princess something,
Belle, the dragon and the freckled princess. So it's instead of Beauty and the Beast, it's the Beast, but replace the Beast with the dragon.
Oh yeah,
dragon.
Already you're speaking to me.
And replace Beauty with freckled princess, and then you reverse them, so the monster comes before the and.
Yep.
Right? So it's like Beast and the Beauty, but you replace Beast with dragon and Beauty with freckled princess.
So you're already speaking my language. And two, it's set, as we know, in a world where there is an online virtual reality like metaverse, very similar. Yeah. You could almost argue that it's set in the same universe as Summer Wars, just in like the future where the technology got better.
Maybe, I don't know, but there was an interview with Hosoda that's going around, very brief, and he took some shots at Miyazaki in the interview.
Oh, I was going to talk about that next as a little bit of an aside.
Very entertaining, but the other thing he said in the interview was like, look, we keep making, all the media we keep making is like, oh, internet bad, internet scary, right? Rah, right? And he's like,
the network.
He's like, the internet's just a reality now. So he's like, and you can see he's trying, quite obviously, to create media with somewhat positive, internet representation.
True, like the moral of Summer Wars was not that internet system, we have to take it down before Skynet does. The moral of that was a bunch of other stuff, and there were both positive and negative aspects of that online universe.
So Digimon, Summer Wars, and now Belle. He's done 3 internet movies, right?
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. And, also I've been thinking independently recently, which I guess I'm in alignment with him in some way, right? You look back in time at, popular media, especially sci-fi stuff, right? And there was sort of an optimistic side of things in 50s and 60s. You had World of Tomorrow type stuff going on, right?
Yep.
And nowadays, almost all sci-fi stuff is some sort of dystopian, play gods.
Yep.
So it's sort of nice. It's like, there are some other people not
Like,
doing.
there's a
UM
chance
play
we could
gods.
not fuck this up, and there are good things that have come out of all of this.
There is some. I mean, things aren't looking good. It sure looks like in the real world we play gods.
Well, because our equivalent of all these online universes for most people in America is basically Facebook, which is
Right.
a kind of literal
in the real
hellscape.
world, we clearly play gods. In most sci-fi stuff, is telling a story of warning us stop playing gods. But it's nice to see some sort of positive outlook, like, hey, the internet can be a good thing for humanity. Let me show you a world in which that is true, right? I
Yep.
like that.
So,
Even
I'm not.
it needs to, even if it's false hope, I'll take.
But I guess also, like, I am not going to come into finally seeing this movie expecting it to be the greatest film I've ever seen. But I have never seen this level of this type of discussion at this level from so many voices from a movie in my life. It's
we've seen plenty of anime movies coming, right? From
not just anime, like live action movies, any kind of movie. Like there've been hype cycles
making all these movies, right? There wasn't hype for any other previous hosted a movie in this fashion, right? People didn't lose their shit.
But I'm saying I have not seen this level of hype for really almost any movie.
A lot of them were well received, but they were not hyped this extensively. So
like just the uniformity of voices who very rarely would say something so hyperbolic, saying that it's the greatest film they've seen is, I'm just trying not to read into that too much and come into this movie with expectations. But this movie could be really good, is all I'm saying.
It could also be those are the same people who, overrate Pan's Labyrinth, and it won't be incredible. It'll just be really good.
I mean, I still think Pan's Labyrinth is incredible.
I don't think so.
Okay. So in that thing that you...
really good.
Anyway, in that thing you alluded to, so I'm going to go through a little thread of a Twitter conversation here because there's an article on the Japan Times where you get it's a bunch of stuff on Mamoru Hosoda. You can just read it. It's a pretty good article. But we got some choice notes that he had some comments on how Miyazaki handled female heroines. And
I learned some things from this article.
Oh, I learned some things too.
I did not know that he worked on any amount of Utena under a different name.
Yep. So Mamoru Hosoda worked on a bunch of episodes of Utena, doing storyboards and key animation. In fact, it appears that he storyboarded the last episode.
I also did not know.
But he did it under this name, Katsuyo Hashimoto.
Sure.
And Utena is the only thing he did that under that name, except he also was a unit director for Samurai Champloo under that name. And I can't find any information on why he used that name for those three projects and nothing else. Like, no one's written anything about this that I can find.
Usually it's because you're supposed to be working on one thing and you got a side project, right?
Yeah, but he did a lot of
reasons that artists use names. You should, songwriters use different names all the fucking time.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying he has a huge portfolio, and the only works he ever used a pseudonym on were Utena.
Pseudonyms are not anything to care about.
But I guess what's notable is
a big deal or have any interesting reasons behind them.
But he used it for 3 different films that are not contemporary to each other.
Likely just like boring old royalties reasons or something like that, right? It's never
those things can be very those things can be very interesting. I'm not saying it's suspicious. I'm saying it's interesting.
They're almost never interesting.
I often find that they're interesting.
Songwriters who use different pseudonyms, it's because they're a songwriter. They could write any kind of music, and they use different names for different genres for branding purposes, or separating their music amongst different publishers. They'll sign a deal under one name and sign a different deal under another name. Things like that.
But anyway, he storyboarded 6 episodes of Utena that are all pivotal ones, and he storyboarded a chunk of the Utena movie.
Right. Okay. Anyway, the major thing that I learned that I did not know is he actually was the director of Howl's Moving Castle, but halfway through he was like, "Fuck this," and he got out of there, and that's why he's not the director of Howl's Moving Castle.
That movie, I think
that is a huge information that I guess other people may have already known that I did not know.
I feel like that movie would have been a lot better if he had actually been the director to the end.
I quite agree. But that gives a lot more, knowing that gives much more weight to his Miyazaki zing.
Yep. And you can read about the Miyazaki thing. We because we're getting back into our lives a little bit, and we've been skipping some Geek Nights. We tend to go way long in the news because Scott and I don't even have time to talk that often, except during making the show. So all our episodes have been super long lately. But you can read that quote yourself. And there's also a thread of the Utena people who figured all this out, and they're talking a lot about, the episodes he worked on were pivotal around Jury, the character specifically, and he seems to have storyboarded away from the original script. There's a conversation around changes he appears to have made from the original script of Utena around Jury's character specifically. And I want to read more. I'm going to dig more into that, but I don't know enough. But I see a bunch of people trying to do that research and like digging
really
stuff
hard
up.
to get evidence of that, right?
Yeah. So this conversation is like ongoing among people who are trying to figure it out. And I'm just going to keep an eye on them and see if there's anything interesting there, or at least some specifics to corroborate it. So you had to think about.
I think it won't be until this is coming out this year. I don't know if we're going to see another big anime movie from anyone until next year.
Yeah.
Right.
And in terms of animation, we have
scheduling is.
We still have a backlog.
We
have a big backlog of animated movies we still got to watch and review on Geek Nights. Not even anime. Like you didn't even see Legend of Hay yet.
No, it's not really in my queue.
Legend of Hay is a like A-tier animated movie. It is fantastic, and I think you'll really like it.
All right, whatever.
Anyway, so you had a thing you want to talk about the Popeye.
Oh, yeah. So this isn't really so much a news, really. It's just a thing that I've discovered recently because someone else I follow has been retweeting it. So there is an official Popeye Twitter account that I assume is run by some marketing social media manager who must work for whoever owns Popeye right now. I don't know who that is. I could probably Google it really easily, but so can you. And I was just really
Oh my God, I just noticed what the actual name of the account is, the @ name.
Yeah, so this account is run very, very well. But it is also extremely pro LGBTQ and leans hard into the fact that, Popeye is basically like, I don't know what he qualifies as gender-wise, but it's not a cis white.
I am amphibious.
Yeah. Right. So I just think that it's really kind of awesome. You see a lot of other brand, and it is just, I don't know if they're actually doing anything, right? In terms of money or anything like that. But it's like just to see a brand, not just put up some rainbow flag in June, right? But to be always, seemingly always, frequently, right, actively leaning into it hard, right, and not just being making some corporate statement.
Well, it's a take that for all the problems of rainbow capitalism, not a benefit of it, but a thing to note about it is that rainbow capitalism type things happen more when the people making decisions with money decide that is the majority of people they're going to make money off of themselves. And it often can represent a sea change in the general sentiment of a population.
But yeah, it's just I'm really, even though how much do I care about Popeye?
I care quite a bit because the one thing a lot of people look at this account. I'll say this: most people have this idea of what Popeye is, but never actually read any of the old Popeye comics or saw the old Popeye cartoons. They are fucked up, weird shit. They are so weird. You have no idea.
One of those things where I probably saw mostly old Popeye.
Oh, I saw the old Popeye.
I have seen those.
Yeah, but I saw it a lot. I was big into it.
They weren't on TV with any regularity.
We had some film reels of Popeye cartoons that we would bust out and watch.
Okay, we didn't have those.
My family was kind of into Popeye.
Actual comics, I saw them once in a while, but it's I could have bought a whole book of them, but you still can, but I just never did because I didn't, it wasn't a high priority. Let me buy all the Popeye collection. I bought the Dick Tracy collection instead. Yeah,
all I'll say is if you never read old Popeye, you're in for a ride. There is no way it's even close to what you think it's like. And if you've never seen the live action Popeye movie with Robin Williams.
I have not. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Right. I can't believe the live action Popeye movie is orthogonally adjacent to the live action Dick Tracy movie in that it is a fucking set piece. They made that Popeye true to the old comic Popeye, probably to a degree that was unhealthy and unwise. And Robin Williams basically just ate the mic and swallowed it. He ate the camera. He ate the scenery. He threw himself into that role to a degree that was almost too much even for Robin Williams.
Okay, then.
That movie, I would say, is a triumph, but I also am not going to necessarily say that it is good.
I don't think it's as good as Pan's Labyrinth.
No, it is not as good as Pan's Labyrinth, but it is something. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right.
I kind of want to watch it again. It's been decades.
Yeah, follow the official Popeye account on Twitter. It's worth it, even if you don't give a lot of craps about Popeye.
Yep. So I think that's enough news. Yeah, we've got plenty long on the news. Let's get right into the next bit. Let me put an M for Hornets again. All right. But anyway, things of the day. So, Scott, are you familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Yeah, it's, I've played Gilgamesh the game, in fact.
So, if any of you out there have never read or like don't know a lot about the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's one of the oldest like things humans have made that is a narrative, and this is like early civilization
that still exists, that we still have.
Yes, that we know
that we
anything
can still
about.
Read. Yeah, survive.
This is a Babylonian poem. Like, we're talking thousands of years before Homer. So thousands of years before the Odyssey. Thousands of years. Now, it might be older. It might be older in the time the Odyssey was written and performed than the Odyssey is to us today. Like, that is a sense of scale you need to internalize. And one thing about it is that it is about the concept of how did animals become human? And the answer, spoilers, is through urban living. Like, it really, like, the narrative of this story, if you've never read it, is basically that humans didn't become human until they lived in cities and like lived in an urban environment, and people who did not live in urban environments were not yet fully human. And that is a take for something that is
true.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, I live in New York City, and it's pretty dire out there outside of these borders. But I digress. So, but one thing that happens in the Epic of Gilgamesh
got it right.
is that Shamat goes out to find Enkidu, who is a human who is not yet human. It is in human form, but he acts and lives like an animal, and he is very powerful and very wise as an animal. And the whole story is about how he becomes human and becomes friends with Gilgamesh. But Enkidu, there's a pivotal scene that gets talked about a lot, especially when like high school kids read Gilgamesh, where he has sex with her for a week. And that is a scene like that. So we always knew that that scene was written in one way, and it was written slightly differently in an updated version of the epic, like hundreds or maybe even 1,000 years later. Very recent evidence that is pretty rock solid, like clay tablets that are confirmed, have shown us that is not two different versions of that sex scene. There are two different week-long sex orgies that happen in the Tale of Gilgamesh. One before he is fully human.
Anime to watch in those thousands of years ago, right? So that was pretty much the only entertainment you had.
Yep. Kind of like how kids read Shakespeare and think it's dry, but if you see Shakespeare perform well, you're like, oh, it's a bunch of sex jokes and fart jokes. Oh, I get it. I was supposed to cheer and yell and interrupt them during this scene.
Yep.
So, Gilgamesh. 2 separate week-long sex orgies confirmed. And this article does a really good job of framing how they figured this out and why it matters and why living in New York is great. So what do you got?
Way to go, Gilgamesh. All right. So way back in the elementary school times, right? All the computers in school were mostly Apple IIs, maybe a Mac towards the late elementary school times. Right?
Yep.
And all the printers we had were mostly like, Apple, the dot matrix ones, right? like
You know,
Apple Print.
yeah, they were like
It
the
was
ones
called.
that could print on unlimited length pages with the little tear offs usually.
Yeah, exactly. So
Printing technology came a long way while we were young.
So if you wanted to print something, well, you could open up a word processing program, type text, and print it out, right? But maybe you wanted to print something that wasn't just text. Well, it's the JPEG and the GIF did not exist yet. So if you wanted to print something else, it's not like, you could like draw something on your screen like with InDesign. So there was a program that was extremely popular in our school, and I assume every other school and anyone else who had an Apple II computer, called the Print Shop, right? And basically, you would open up this program, and you could choose, like what do you want to print? A big banner, a greeting card, right? It's like there were choices of things you wanted to print out. And then you would, fill in sort of these templates. Like it's like, okay, choose one of the pictures, the cake, the bear, the whatever, you got choices, right? And you could change the banner, the borders if you wanted to, and you could change the colors depending on what inks your printer had, and you could type some text, and there was a lot of creative flexibility you had with this little program, and then you would push print. And one thing it could do that even computers today really can't do very well, because it was dot matrix, it could just print something fucking long. So you would print very often these really long banners that would say like "Happy Birthday so and so."
All I'm gonna say is, how every elementary school has like the incident that gets talked about during like a particular time period.
You printed something long?
I didn't do it, but the incident was basically who printed the big dick. It came out of the printer one day, and no one would take the fall, and no one ever figured out who did it, and that was like the incident. I want to say this was second or third grade.
Yeah, but yeah, so this program, there's like nothing else that prints things like this program does, right? It's a very particular aesthetic, and these particular designs, you really can't replicate them. But somebody took the old Apple program, and they emulated it, obviously not difficult at all. And they stuck it in a web browser. Again, not difficult at all. Archive.org has a huge archive. I'm sure that probably includes this program emulated. But on this website, theprintshop.club, they have modified / hooked into this emulated ROM of this application.
Oh, shit. I thought your thing of the day was just this web page working, not that bit. I didn't even notice that bit.
In such a way, because just emulating an old Apple II program is no big deal, right?
Yeah.
Every single, right? They have emulated it and modified it in such a way that it comes time to print with this Apple II program in your web browser that's $0, at least nowadays it's $0, it will create for you a PDF. So then you can, I guess you still can't print something long because you don't have a dot matrix printer, but any of the one-pagers, right?
You can print something long if you send it to the right kind of print shop, and a PDF is a way to do that.
Send your long multi-page PDF to the right place, and they'll print you something long. But now you can print a print shop greeting card for whoever on their birthday, anniversary, whatever.
So our friend Red's birthday will happen during our beach trip. I think we should all make
out a little.
I think we should make some greeting cards.
Okay.
I got some ideas. I'm feeling this.
We can't get a Pokemon into this thing, though.
No, I'll have to draw one badly. In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, The Tale of Genji, as Genji continues to sleepwalk through life. I feel like by the end of summer, we'll be ready to talk about this on the show. I'm moving.
It is the first novel ever written by any human ever, it is not even close to being as old as The Tale of Gilgamesh.
Nope. But The Tale of Gilgamesh is a saga.
It is indeed. It is not a novel, and that is why The Tale of Genji is still the first novel ever written by human beings that we are aware of.
Genji is just, like, I say this every time, but as I keep reading, he just sleepwalks through life. He's almost like a Captain Tyler figure, except he never seems to have a moment where he does something that matters. We'll see how it keeps going, but I got some thoughts on it so far, but it's enjoyable. My advice to you, though, if you're going to start reading it with us, now that we're reading it at a pretty steady pace, don't fuss over fiddly little details to figure out exactly what happened. If you're like a little vague on who said what or like who someone was, just keep trucking.
Become a scholar of Genji.
Just keep trucking. Read it like you'd read a dime store romance novel.
Yep.
Like that's the way to go. In some other news, we just did a panel, a new one, at the Penny Arcade Expo Online East called Atari Game Design. It live streamed. A lot of people watched it. It was very well received. The entirety of it is now on YouTube. You can just watch it. It's live. And yeah, it's up there. Check it out. It's a pretty good panel.
In a somewhat also news, I have mostly finished, at least 1.0 finished, right? Even though I then immediately filed a bunch of issues against myself. The tool that will form the foundation of the new GeekNights website. So I'm going to be making like a little video. It's already on GitHub and whatnot, but I'm going to make a little demo video so that if you want to make a website, you'll be able to see how to use this tool to get basically a whole bunch of shit done in like a matter of minutes and then start making your website. So now that this exists, it took me a long time to make it. I can use it and be able to develop GeekNights website and make changes to it very, very quickly and rapidly. So that ball's going to be rolling
GeekNights
when it's not nice out anymore.
Yeah, which is fine because like there's a bunch of projects. I have a project around taking every main bit of every GeekNights episode ever and pulling it out into a standalone thing because people might want a review of like an anime that we did in like 2007 and don't need 30 minutes of us talking about bikes or the pub crawl outside or whatever the hell was going on in Beacon at the time.
Yep. So yeah, it's if you want to program a website and there isn't an existing web application that does what you want to do, like if you want to make a blog, just use WordPress. If you want to make e-commerce, there's a lot of choices.
Yep.
I got hiccups suddenly.
But if you want to make something like this,
make a website that does not exist, there isn't a software that does the website you want to do, you may want to consider using the thing that I just made.
Yeah.
So,
and GeekNights,
YouTube and whatnot.
GeekNights will finally, at some point, incorporate our new branding into like our website, which still has our old branding.
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. Oh, I should probably mention the tool I made is called Django Go Boot because it helps you boot up Django better than the regular template thing that if you use the default Django start project, that doesn't get you anywhere, right?
Yeah.
The thing I made gets you the template and the repository and the CI/CD stack and launches your production server as soon as you make a release. It does almost everything for you. You don't have to do anything.
That's good stuff.
You have to do a tiny bit.
It also means we can start to add eventually it means some things we wanted to add to our website will be able to appear on our website.
Yep.
We have pointedly avoided putting new types of things on the website because that would have meant fucking with the old website. All right. So let's dive right into it. Hanna-Barbera cartoons. We're not covering like the history of Hanna-Barbera because they got bought by Warner Brothers.
You can go online, you can go on YouTube, you can go on anywhere, and there are people who are like scholars of this shit, and they know all the fucking details of how everything went down, and we don't know any of that. And even if we researched it, we couldn't. Why bother repeating what someone else who knows more already said? So, we're just gonna focus on our experience with these things.
Yep,
right?
like because we watched a lot. Both of us watched a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, even if we didn't realize they were Hanna-Barbera for much of our lives.
Yeah. So for those who are unaware, right, maybe not from the U.S. or not have younger, right, in the United States, right, cartoons have been around a long time. Anime, you had your Disney's and you had your Warner Brothers, right,
Fleischer Brothers.
They were putting out these really high quality animations, in theaters playing before movies, right? You watch a Bugs Bunny from like, the 40s or whatever, it looks incredible, right? And then once television came around, mostly we're talking 60s, 70s, 80s, and then fading out 90s, right? In those times, you need TV animation. So they did replay the movie quality animations on television, right? I saw a lot of Warner Brothers on TV, but you needed something to go on TV that was cheaper, right?
So you could make more new stuff.
To produce. Yeah. And so in the United States, the Hanna-Barbera production studio, right, had a large hand in producing lots and lots and lots of television animation from especially 60s, 70s, 80s, and then fading out in the 90s.
The people who made, in like 1957, the people who made Tom and Jerry, and a bunch of people who used to work at MGM. Tom and Jerry
was like MGM, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So basically a bunch of people who were working in and around MGM got together to make this. And the two people who drove it all and like founded the studio were named Hanna and Barbera, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera.
So the shows often feature much lower quality animation, right? You'd be like, wow, this is newer than like Snow White. Snow White looks 100 times better than this. It's like, yeah, well, Snow White.
Yep. It kind of, when I was young, Hanna-Barbera cartoons actually messed with my my perceived chronology of animation, because I assumed as a kid, like when I was really young in a pre-internet era, that like Yogi Bear was ancient compared to all these Disney things I was watching.
Yeah, it was. But the thing is, you had to make how many episodes of Yogi Bear? You only had to make 90 minutes of Snow White. The Snow White had more money and was in the movie theater, right? The Yogi Bear didn't make as much.
But I was a kid and there was no internet. I didn't know.
All right. So Hanna-Barbera, the other thing that really, stood out about them was just they were definitely a quantity shop, right? Just throwing shit against the wall, right? Seeing what stuck. When things stuck, they made lots and lots of episodes of that thing, right? And worked harder at it and did a better job on it. And when things didn't stick, they would end quickly, right?
Yep.
A lot of shows they made that had a very small number of episodes.
I would
never
say
got replayed anywhere ever.
Even just looking at the stuff from like the 60s and 70s, I only recognize like 10% of these shows.
Yeah,
even
a lot of things just
like
were throwing shit at the wall. They didn't stick. They weren't popular. And then just like, all right, enough of that. Let's move.
like I got to talk about
thing.
this Roman holidays thing, because I found it on this list. They only made 13 episodes. So the Flintstones, thing they made, super popular. Like that is still a touchstone of American pop culture, the Flintstones. So Hanna-Barbera was trying to recreate the success of the Flintstones by having another show with a modern-ish family living in a heavily fictionalized ancient time. So they made a show called The Roman Holidays. Basically, the Flintstones, but set during ancient Rome.
And the Jetsons is just Flintstones in the future.
Yup, there's even a movie, The Flintstones Meet the Jetstones. Yeah. So they made this show with characters like Mr. Evictus and Mr. Tycoonius. And it looks like it was just awful. It failed instantly. But also they have fucking Dom DeLuise to voice a bunch of the characters.
Well, how big of a deal was Dom DeLuise at that time?
Yeah, at that time. So let's see. This was early 70s.
He might have been a big deal already. I don't know.
This was early 70s. So he had not yet done all those Mel Brooks movies.
Yeah. So
Dom DeLuise was not a big deal yet. I didn't realize.
Right.
He didn't become a big deal until basically right after that. That was like the last not big deal thing he did.
Well, so
2 years later was Blazing Saddles.
We did a whole episode on Scooby-Doo alone, so let us not speak of Scooby-Doo. Let us speak of everything else.
So the one thing I got to say first is the shows that like as a kid, I recognized a lot of things that I thought were Hanna-Barbera, and I was right. And I always had this perception as a kid that they were bad, but I still watched them, but I didn't like watching them. Like it was this weird situation.
On which one?
Like Yogi Bear, I never liked, but I watched it a lot on TV for some reason. I just ever found.
I just didn't really like it.
I didn't like it at all. I don't know why I watched it. Like it just seemed so plodding and insipid, and like the jokes weren't funny, and it was like the same fucking joke every time. But somehow
it was the same joke every time. That's true.
It was just on TV, and I would just sit there watching it. But some of the shows I would actively watch and enjoy. Like I particularly as a kid, I liked the Flintstones. I liked the Jetsons. I didn't actually like Johnny Quest, but all of my friends liked it. I just didn't think it was good. I did not like
Johnny Quest. Was a weird one in that if you saw the aesthetic of Johnny Quest, what Johnny Quest is supposed to be, right? I looked at it and I'm like, that's the thing I should like. That aesthetically, that's amazing, right? It's like, but actually watching Johnny Quest, I never enjoyed it.
Nope.
Right? So I never watched it that much.
It's interesting because one of my favorite animated,
like a thing I should like, but nope, actually I don't.
One of my favorite animated shows in history, including anime, is actually the Venture Brothers. I think it is a phenomenal and unique show,
which is primarily a Johnny Quest parody.
It started as a Johnny Quest parody, like straight up, but then it did. I know this is a word that people misuse a lot, but I mean this directly, specifically, and I'm choosing this word carefully. It evolved into a deconstruction of shows like Johnny Quest, and then it went way beyond that into being like a post Johnny Quest thing. Anyway,
just kept it going somehow, right?
They kept it going and made it good.
And then they're just, all right, we'll change course now.
I did enjoy some of the they made a lot of shows that I would see like once and then never see again and never be able to find again. Like a lot of cartoon adaptations of real things. Like they made some Three Stooges like one-offs. They made some Laurel and Hardy one-offs.
Sure. Well, because most of these things, right, aired before we were even alive.
Yep.
And and on broadcast television, if there's a Saturday morning cartoon, for example, I don't know, let's see, fucking, I don't know, this says, let's find it. Oh, here's a good example, right? So there was a show called Fantastic Max. Apparently it had 26 episodes. I saw that when I was a kid because it was actually on, like, daily, on syndicated on a particular channel at a particular time.
I've never heard of or seen Fantastic Max, nor do I recognize it from looking at images.
It's actually a really sort of imaginative show. I want to say it's almost like Muppet Babies.
Literally never heard of this. This does not exist in my universe.
It's like this kid is like, he's a baby in a crib, right? Named Max. And he's got like a friend robot and shit. But he's like, then he's going off on like space adventures, but actually it was just his imagination or something along those lines.
The more
right?
images I see from the show, the less I recognize it. I've definitely never encountered this show in my life until just now.
But yeah, I watched like many episodes of that show because it happened to be on, right? A show I liked a lot better than that was Captain Caveman, who I thought was funny, hitting things with his club. And that was basically almost never on, right? It's like I'd be lucky if
I
think it was
hated Captain Caveman. And I'll admit, I also hated Hens on Scrappy-Doo. I also hated Wacky Races, to be honest.
Wacky Races was,
here's my problem with Wacky Races. When I encountered it, the concept was like perfect. Like just pump it into my veins. Get all these cartoon characters from all these things. Do it right. Like I was so into that concept. But every single episode I watched was the antithesis of humor. Like
it's just Muttley going.
Yeah, like that. I like that. But he has to go in a context that is novel and funny at some point.
No such thing.
No. Like Wacky Race, it's funny. The Wacky Races are heavily parodied in Venture Brothers as well.
Okay, sure. But yeah, it's like, you was pretty much just like, when were you born? When were you home watching TV?
Yep.
Right? And, obviously the big shows, the ones that had tons of episodes, it's like, I don't know. I may have seen every Jetsons. It's possible. I may have seen every Flintstones. I don't remember them all.
There's actually only 166 episodes of the Flintstones. That's less than a Sailor Moon.
So this is something that shocked me because even as a kid, I knew that the Flintstones was one of the only first only cartoon that was like on primetime television. It was super popular. It was a super big deal, and that it was super until The Simpsons. It was the longest running, right? So I had been under the impression when I was a kid that the Flintstones was still running and had been running.
I was too with a lot of these shows.
And that I had seen that I was seeing new episodes when it was on prime. It was on prime time, even when in the 80s at certain.
Not
points.
only that, but a lot of these
I was
shows.
Under the impression that I was seeing a new Flintstones episode, and it was only today that I realized from Wikipedia that actually no, it ran from 1960 to 1966, and that was it. The end.
But the other thing that happened
was it on prime time in the 80s? I don't understand.
Well, but
that big a deal.
Pursuant to that. A lot of these shows, they wouldn't even air early episodes of them because sometimes they were in black and white or they didn't fit the style of the time. Or there's a lot of reasons.
Only a subset of the episodes were actually getting syndicated and repeated, and you could sort of actually see, even as a child, you could sort of see like there were shifts in the show, right? Yep. Flintstones, for example, when the alien Gazoo guy shows up, right? You can definitely see there's like pre-Gazoo Flintstones and post-Gazoo Flintstones, and you can. Even as a kid, I understood they're trying to, get the show revitalized.
Like I would know. And this happened for a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons. An episode would come on, and between the opener and how the animation looked, especially like how thick the lines were and how straight the line work was, I would know, ooh, this is going to be a good one or this is going to be a bad one. I knew, kind of like with Tom and Jerry, you could tell, oh, those are the bad Tom and Jerry's.
Yep.
But
there were definitely different sets of them, right?
But I also had this perception.
There were Johnny Quests. Then there was like new Johnny Quest, and then there were like 3 different Johnny Quest series, right? And like only one of them was the one that was like shown much later. I've probably never even seen the first 2.
Yeah,
right?
but I also
And
had
most of
this
the episodes are
perception,
from the third one.
and we talked about this a lot with Scooby-Doo. Some of these shows, I'd see even possibly the first episode onward, but because of the way pop culture talked about them, and just because like there would be elements of the show I didn't understand as a kid for various reasons, I always assumed that these shows had been running since like for decades. Like they'd just been running. Like I came in the middle.
The Flintstones was the only one that I thought like had been running.
I thought that about Scooby-Doo and a bunch of other things too.
Oh, well, Scooby-Doo, I understood that like the original Scooby-Doo was no longer running, but like pup named Scooby-Doo was like the.
Oh, no, but I knew that the pup named Scooby-Doo was weird, like recent garbage, and I only like the older ones.
I kind of like the pup anyway.
And it's well, we all agree that anything with Scrappy-Doo was bad news.
So another thing is that.
Oh, but the thing you raised about why did we have all these weird perceptions and why was it like? I think what happened was
no information available.
But also the anime filter, kind of like how a lot of people like, oh, in the 90s, like all the anime was great. Yeah, it's more that Hanna-Barbera, one, they only made more episodes of shows that did well when they first ran. And then in syndication, the stuff that was aired was basically the cream of the crop, the most popular, proven successful things. So we saw the distilled best that Hanna-Barbera had to offer.
In order to see a bad one on TV in the broadcast days, right, you would have had to watch it on Saturday morning, right, when it was a brand new show. You could only see bad stuff if it was brand new, and if it didn't do well, it was gone very quickly, right? It would be on your Saturday morning cartoons for like a few weeks, and then, maybe 12, 13 weeks, right? So it's a few months, right? So you'd have to be watching for those few months, and then the show was gone, and it will never be reshown anywhere, and it wasn't popular, so they didn't make VHS tapes, right? And it had to be while you were alive,
Yep.
So, and the other thing, sometimes you would see Hanna-Barbera characters, right? The ones that come to mind for me the most in this category are like the Huckleberry Hound, the Magilla Gorilla, and the Snagglepuss.
And Huckleberry Hound, that was the first one, the Huckleberry Hound show. Yogi Bear was a spin-off.
Yeah, but those 3 characters in particular were characters I was completely familiar with. If you showed me those characters as a kid, I could tell you what their name was.
Yep.
Right? And I could tell you that they were Hanna-Barbera characters, but I had never seen, I still have never seen an episode of Huckleberry Hound or Snagglepuss.
In fact, the only thing I ever saw Huckleberry Hound in that wasn't just like a marketing cameo ever.
Wacky Races
was either Wacky
a Yogi Bear and Friends.
So I hated Yogi Bear and Friends to the point that
Yogi's Ark. It was Yogi's Ark.
Oh
right?
fuck! I forgot about Yogi's Ark. I watched that show. I hated it.
In the fucking thing.
I hated that show, but I watched it for some reason. But The Good, the Bad, and Huckleberry Hound is a movie, and for some reason we saw this movie a bunch of times.
The real movie, the Good, Bad, and the
It is arguably a parody of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It is an animated film produced in 1988. It is the second worst movie I have ever seen to completion in my life, literally and specifically. This movie,
I didn't know it existed till today. So
is so, as a kid, I guess we'd watch it a bunch, and I guess I assumed, because the way adults would react to it, and I knew The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I just for some reason, I guess I liked this movie, but watching it slightly older, not only did I realize that it is one of the worst, most plotting, unfunny things humans have ever made, but 2, now I realize that our parents hated this movie and hated the fact that we liked it and kept wanting to watch it.
Oh, okay.
It is so bad.
So Hanna-Barbera, though, did make good stuff, right? So towards the end of the Hanna-Barbera days, right, they were powering the sort of original Cartoon Network in the late 90s.
Yeah, like Powerpuff Girls came out of that legacy.
Powerpuff Girls is like technically Hanna-Barbera still. There were basically these cartoons, right, before Cartoon Network Studios, or sort of in league with Cartoon Network Studios. It was like a partnership, and then Cartoon Network Studios split off and was its own thing, and they didn't need Hanna-Barbera anymore. But Dexter's Lab is a Hanna-Barbera, right? That's an incredible A+ all-time show. Those other cartoons like the Johnny Bravo Cow and Chicken, it's I Am Weasel. It's like, no, they weren't that bad.
Yeah.
Right. Powerpuff Girls also legendary, right? So
they made an animated adaptation of Dumb and Dumber.
I guess so.
In 1995, 13 episodes.
Right. There was also some other stuff they did that was also sort of good in a way, right? So like Herculoids, right? It's like, okay, that has, it's not the greatest, but it's, this it's kind of a cool sci-fi thing, right? With the Gleep and the Gloop,
Yeah.
right? And the
Well, there was the
dinosaur
Bill and
guy.
Ted cartoon that I did watch and enjoy.
Yeah. There's Thundar the Barbarian, which I love a lot, but obviously is not that great, but it's
Yeah.
there's a thing about it, right? That I like, of the old like Top Cat is actually, if you watch a Top Cat, it's like, okay, the episodes are very samey, but it's actually kind of funny. I like
Pick an episode of Top Cat if you haven't seen one recently. It's better than any Yogi Bear episode ever.
Maybe.
The
Space
Flintstones
Ghost,
almost
right?
holds up okay, but it holds up in the same way that like the Honeymooners or any old
Well,
sitcom
it's a parody of
holds
the
up.
Honeymooners. It's the
Exactly,
same
but it
thing.
holds up about the same level. Like it's interesting that it is both parody, but also entertaining enough on its own.
Well, it's not a parody.
Well, yeah, it's
as
more
much
like
as it
homage
is-
slash
it's the same fucking
reimagining,
thing. It's just,
reskinning.
hey, let's do the same thing. Yeah.
Honeymooners, they didn't ever have an alien show up though.
I guess Mork and Mindy would be when the aliens showed up.
Mork and Mindy. I'm curious. I feel like young people don't even know that show existed.
I think there was a Mork and Mindy cartoon that they did, which is
It's.
also Hanna-Barbera.
I was actually I was talking
think.
to I was online talking to some people online in a different Discord a few weeks ago, and someone complained that like American TV only now realized that like fantasy stuff is really popular, like fantasy.
That's
and
not true at all.
And it was like, I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, Mork and Mindy, like the old shows had really
Bewitched
weird.
Bewitched was also like tremendous. I was reading recently, somebody, I don't know how true this is. It sounded true. They said they were basically saying, Bewitched was huge in Japan.
Yeah.
And they tried to say that it was responsible for a lot of, the creation of the magical girl stuff, which sounds plausible. The timing's right.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating if true. But
But-
in the quantity, it's like, lots and lots of garbage stuff that was popular for some reason, but like the Smurfs was a Hanna-Barbera show.
Yep.
Right? It was like 256 episodes. I only ever saw a few and wasn't that into it.
I was into Smurfs apparently and Care Bears too. Not that that's Hanna-Barbera.
And then they tried to sort of revive Smurfs with Snorks, right? Which weren't as successful.
Oh, I watched the Snorks. I would argue the Snorks was a better show than the Smurfs, but it was not good.
Yeah, well, Snorks ran for quite a while. It was like 60-something freaking episodes.
For some reason, I always watched the Snorks.
Snorks was one of the ones I could have watched because it was on Saturday morning.
I was always
But I
watching it
didn't.
when we were at
It was like,
Grandma's
Snorks
house.
is on, change the channel. It's like-
We would be at Grandma's house and like Snorks would just be on, and Grandma had a giant TV, so we'd watch it.
yeah, I would change the channel or do something else when Snorks was on.
Yeah. Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor is an American Saturday morning cartoon, Hanna-Barbera, CBS.
There was they did a cartoon adaptation of I Dream of Jeannie, just called Jeannie, that was 16 episodes. I've never even knew that existed till this second.
You could have some
The
fun.
sheer quantity is just like off the charts of how much stuff they made.
Yep,
and
just
how-
throw it all at the wall, and if anything's good, put a little more budget into it and milk it forever.
And I think a lot of it, some of the stuff had some positive, like Space Ghost, right? Had a lot of positive aspects, mostly because Space Ghost was revived and reused as a character in other things that was much
Yep.
better. But if you watch old Space Ghost, it's not that great, really.
It's pretty dire, but it's actually above average for its time.
Sure, but there are aspects of it, and notably the character designs, right, that were really incredible, even though the stories were not great.
Well, look at what like Space Ghost and contemporary, especially like Hanna-Barbera, like superhero designs compared to what superheroes tended to be drawn like in cartoons before that. There are some imaginative,
it's like-
interesting character designs
But-
that you can see a line of thinking that leads to BTAS in the distant future.
Yeah, what they lacked in writing stories, or, not always lacked in writing stories, but
Yeah.
often lacked in writing stories, almost always lacked in animation and production value,
Yep.
right? The character design, right, and the concepts were almost, there was something to them, even if the show was garbage, right? So that is, that why a lot of them I think endure. Right?
Yep.
Is
But
based
also
on that strength alone.
the fact that they generally came from, because like there were the shows that were, here is a toy, make a show around this toy. The show exists solely to sell the toy. But most Hanna-Barbera stuff was, this is a show. We are selling the show, and then we're advertising things and milking the intellectual property.
Yes, then we will make merch from the show, the character that we made. Like, let's make a character and then try to sell the character's merch afterwards.
Yep.
The other, of course, that's half of it. The other half was, here is an existing intellectual property.
We need a cheap way to milk that with a one-off cartoon.
Animated cartoon version of whatever that is to go on television. Right? Or in some cases, like GoBots, it was like Transformers is a big thing. Let's make, right? We don't have that intellectual property, but we can make GoBots. They can't stop us.
The Gary Coleman Show.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that existed either.
An example of, there's an existing popular thing, Gary Coleman. Let's make an animated version of it.
Yeah.
It was very, very common. So, so this, Hanna-Barbera, right? Because of when we were born, right? If you were born any later, it really only that, if we were born just a little bit later, only that like late 90s good Cartoon Network stuff would have really hit us.
Yep.
If we were born earlier, this stuff probably would have hit us way more.
Yep. Well, but I think later Hanna-Barbera would have hit us way more. The 80s was this specific era, like late 70s through the early, like the end of the 80s. Mm-hmm. There was a certain set of Hanna-Barbera stuff that was recycled and almost re-released as new to a generation. And it kind of worked. Like you said, that was TV to us. Yep. And a lot of people our age.
And I think that most people who are younger, they got like nothing because it was done.
Yep.
It's like they lived in like this golden age of, like just Adventure Time was on.
Yeah, but it was also, there was interesting, because think about it.
Yogi Bear.
Like Yogi Bear was on in the 60s. And so our parents watched it. Then they have us, and then suddenly Yogi Bear is on TV again, and their kids are watching it. That was like, there was like this one cycle that was rarely replicated before or after. Like the timing just happened.
Yeah, before then, I mean, there wasn't TV always, right? TV was relatively new before Hanna-Barbera, right? But, previous generations, well, their kids weren't necessarily into the same stuff, jazz music, rock music, right? And then this was like they had the chance to like produce the same thing for several generations in a row, or at least reproduce, right? Scooby-Doo, pup named Scooby-Doo, right? But we did not, we only sort of did that, right? We had Transformers, then we had like Transformers Beast whatever, Ninja Turtles. We have that, right? Ninja Turtles, and then there's like a newer Ninja Turtles. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, right? That pattern sort of continued of the old generation's thing being sold to the newer generation.
Yep. But this was taking the original thing unmodified and just putting it back on TV.
Yeah, that's the difference, is that we just had the old 60s Flintstones. They didn't make a new Flintstones for us. We were just watching. There was, I guess there was that one where like Pebbles and Bam Bam were grown up or whatever.
Oh my God, I forgot that existed. It wasn't good.
But mostly they just showed us the old Flintstones directly. No one was going to take old My Little Pony and just put it on TV in 2015 or whatever.
And there's something, and I don't think it's that these shows like Hanna-Barbera like had the secret and aged better. I think it's just that they made so many things that a subset of them,
just a machine.
Yeah, but that small subset aged well because they happened to be very good relative to everything else. But like old My Little Pony, not good.
You don't say.
You couldn't just put that on TV.
Aspects to it.
Yeah, but you couldn't just put that on TV. It would not sell. It would not play. Yeah. And most Hanna-Barbera stuff you could not just put on TV. This very narrow lens of Hanna-Barbera was successful in this regard, and nothing else they made was.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Those other things were successful in their original runs, but they never came back for a reason.
Yeah, in terms of, I think it really took. There's probably something I'm missing, but it really feels like, Disney Afternoon was the seal breaker, right? Sort of like, all right, that's enough of that.
Yep.
We're making the
coupled
good
with
shit now.
coupled with me discovering anime when I was in 4th grade, really just put the brakes on me watching any of this stuff.
But I'm just saying, up until the Disney afternoon, it was like, okay, we're just churning out whatever for the kids, rerun the Looney Tunes.
Like once any Disney afternoon thing appeared, like once I saw like 10 seconds of Tailspin, and Hanna-Barbera ceased to exist.
Dale Rescue Rangers be the first one?
Oh my God, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers.
DuckTales the first. It was DuckTales and Chip and Rescue Rangers were the first two.
When those shows came out, I don't think I watched a second of any Hanna-Barbera like old stuff again after that point until I became an adult.
Pretty much, yeah. It was like, here, let me show you the real stuff, kid.
Your kids today with your like Adventure Time is the old show at this point.
Like you couldn't even have like, to put on, like Tailspin. It's like, what show could you put on before or after it that wouldn't make the contrast too apparent? That, like,
yeah, right. Imagine Tailspin ends, and then Snagglepuss comes on stage. Hey, yeah.
It's like, what is this?
You haven't seen Westworld, which you should at some point. I think you'd really like it because it's a cyberpunk.
I saw the
thing.
Yul Brynner Westworld a long time ago.
Yeah, the dude.
I don't remember much.
You would enjoy the new Westworld specifically, I think. I know you won't watch it, so it doesn't matter.
In it?
Nah, but there's a scene where a character who is an AI sees a picture from like the real world, like the outside, like a tourist leaves a picture behind, and they're programmed to not be able to recognize modern things. And there's this scene, she's looking at this picture, and she's just like someone shows it to her, like, what do you think of this? Because he's trying to like do a thing. And she looks at it and she's like, but I don't see anything. Like, I don't see anything at all. I don't understand what I'm looking at. I feel like that is how a kid today, after they saw like the modern DuckTales, would react to any amount of Snagglepuss animation.
Yeah, and this isn't like a situation where like it was just where it was like bad for its, it's just old and that's why it looks that way, right? It's like, no, Tailspin like holds up. You can watch that now.
Yep.
Right?
DuckTales held up okay. It's just the new DuckTales made it, honestly, did a way better job.
Right. Is that the quality level of it was just like, below par, unacceptable levels often.
Hanna-Barbera, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Low production value on purpose. And it kind of worked.
Even something like, Rocky and Bullwinkle wasn't Hanna-Barbera, but it had a low production value, but it also made up, it had writing.
The writing was way better.
Right. Rocky and Bullwinkle had writing and also the character design. So it had two things, right? So Rocky and Bullwinkle holds up on that, even though there's no animation really to speak of.
I feel like you could take any long-running old Hanna-Barbera show, run it into a AI natural text generator platform, and it would just spit out scripts that would be good enough.
Yeah, I mean, Rocky and Bullwinkle is a freaking serial, right? It was basically, when you think about it, Rocky and Bullwinkle is really just a radio show that just happened to have a little
having to have like loosely animated animatics on top of it.
But it was a really like if you just listen to Rocky and Bullwinkle, that's probably like a top tier radio serial, like as good as The Shadow.
Ooh, I saw a great Twitter thread recently where someone was listening to a bunch of old radio dramas, and they were like, "No, don't like venerate these old shows. Most of them are hot garbage, unlistenable shit. Just let them be lost to time."
That is true. Very true.
But a few survived because they were the good ones. Exactly.
Like The Shadow and the Rocky.
The Shadow. We had so much of The Shadow on LPs that we would listen to at night.
You can just download it all now, I think, right?
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
And Natasha does. Moose and Squirrel.
All right. I think that was a good show. See you on the flip side.